Hello, everybody. Welcome to IC Topic Chats, and May the 4th be with you, because it is, in fact, May 4th. And for a lot of us, that's Star Wars Day. So you can see we're having a good time with it today. I'm going to take off the hood so I don't look completely like an idiot. But I can tell you I will be watching some Star Wars shows today. I'm hoping that members of my family who we've been trying to put together the Mandalorian show we can watch that together later. We'll see. Anyhow, Star Wars Day is a lot of fun in our family, and I've done Star Wars themed runs with people in our community where I ran the entire thing carrying this lightsaber, which is my child's, and wearing a Darth Vader mask the entire time. Kind of scared some people, but I will say we needed to stop traffic. If you stop out in traffic to stop people so you can let 30 people run by holding a lightsaber and a Darth Vader, people stop. So that's just note for the future in case you ever need to stop traffic for a group of people. Works really well. All right, so today we are going to be looking at a bunch of quotes from Yoda. Okay, now before we get started, I feel like it's important. As much as I think everybody should know everything about Star Wars, or at least a little bit about Star Wars, I've grown up finding that there are people who know absolutely nothing about Star Wars. So I think it's helpful to get some operational definitions in here. Star Wars is and continues to be a movie franchise. It was started by George Lucas. When I was about 7, the first movie came out, and it blew my mind, and about all the kids my age, we all loved it. So we grew up with it. And then I remember going off to college and meeting people, and they said, I've never watched Star Wars. And it was just like, you just slapped my mother. How could you not have watched Star Wars? This is such an important franchise. Even I think my wife only watched the first movie originally just because she had to for a movie class that she was taking in college. So that makes no sense to me. Anyhow, because it was such an amazing mental kind of awesome experience being a kid growing up with that. Some things we should talk about so that you understand for this little mini lecture on independent consulting and the reflections on Star Wars. There's the word force, which is this mysterious spiritual energy field that may impart extraordinary abilities. And usually the people who have the ability to wield the force are Jedi, or people who are in the training of being a Jedi. These are in the movie franchise. They're the protagonists, the people who wield the force. There's also Sith, but we're not going to get into that. Darth Vader is a Sith. He's a bad guy, right? The Jedi are the good guys. Yoda is the ultimate good guy who helped train Jedi for over 800 years, a legendary Jedi master. You can see there are younglings who become Padawans, knights, and masters. And I thought that was interesting when I was reflecting on that, Anne, because I think you refer to the new consultants involved as younglings, and that's just kind of an irony to me. I didn't ever put those two together until today. Anyhow, in many ways, I think we're all Padawans. We're all training. We're all learning. And so in many ways, I will think of all of us as Padawans today. I don't know if anybody has really reached master. Giving some backstory to the way I think about these things and things that I think will be important for us today. We've got networking karma and ikigai. Sorry about that. The networking karma idea is one where, and I've talked about this in previous sessions, we benefit and we grow our practices, we grow our capacity to learn in our community by giving freely of ourselves to others, to our other independent consultants in our TIG, to our clients. And by doing that, we create relationships which in turn, in ways that are almost force-like, they're beyond our understanding, they create real business opportunities. And by doing that freely in a way that you're not keeping score, there's a book on that called Never Eat Alone. And so that's kind of where this concept comes from. It's something I heard from another person who gave a little lecture on it. And I've taken that very seriously. Second piece is this ikigai idea. Ikigai is a Japanese term, and it's actually very similar to Jim Collins' good to great hedgehog concept. The difference here is, and this is a westernized version of it, some people who get really serious about Ikigai and Japanese ideas may have some issues with the way we think about this, but this is a kind of a westernized idea. If you think about the things that you love, the things that you're good at, what you can get paid for, you can have a successful business. And those are the three pieces of Jim Collins's good to great hedgehog concept. The Ikigai concept incorporates the idea of what the world needs. And I like that idea, because if we focus on serving all four of those circles, that Venn diagram, we're going to stay focused on what's important to us, what we do really well, what is something that can be productive for our consulting practices. So we use networking karma to pursue our Ikigai. And to interpret this in Star Wars terms, we're going to say that is the way that you use the Force. And when we talk about using the Force, this is that becoming kind of like one with the community, and understanding that to be powerful as a Jedi Knight or a Padawan or whatever, we need to be able to be in touch with our Force. And in terms of independent consulting, this is what you do. Okay, and that's the Force. All right, so that's my backstory. That's my interpretation on how we think about these things. So let's do some quotes. We've got 10 quotes from Yoda. A Jedi's strength flows from the Force. So we use our mission, our vision, our Ikigai, or our niche, however you want to interpret it, as our focus. The focus becomes your ability to focus on the Force. This is our strength. Do or do not. There is no try. This is something that a lot of these quotes were taken from Yoda talking to another protagonist who was in training, Luke Skywalker. He's kind of the main character throughout much of the series, and he trained Luke Skywalker. And there were points where Luke Skywalker didn't trust his ability to do things, and so this is a quote, probably the most famous quote of all the quotes. But effectively, we need to be committed to our independent consulting practices fully. If we set out to develop a practice, you're going to find resistance. You're going to have cognitive dissonance along the way. And you have to expect that, but you have to keep going. There's an old adage or saying of the only way out is through, meaning if you're in a difficult situation and you don't know how to do it, you just got to keep moving forward and you'll find your way out. Control, you must learn control. This is related to the same idea that we've been talking about with a lot of this. You need to think about using your Force Venn diagram, that Ikigai idea, and doing that through that excuse me, social networking idea. Difficult to see, always in the motion the future is. So yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. None of us do. We try and predict the future in as much as we can by knowing when the funders are going to release grants, if that's the work that you do. If you have a good understanding for your clients, if you're working in the nonprofit sector, you have an understanding for what's the next new thing, the next thing that people ought to be considering. About 20 years ago, when we had logic model development, when there was a lot of thought about logic models, that was a new thing that we knew was happening, and it was another way to try and predict the future. But it's difficult to understand what's going to happen. We have to be nimble. We have to come and show up to these AEA sessions and get involved with our TIGs so that we understand things. The work that Ann Emery and Stephanie Evergreen have done in the way of data visualization has been really important. And so as these things come and they present themselves, we need to be aware of them, and we need to incorporate them into our practices so that we can best serve our clients and effectively, grow our businesses in ways that are responsible for our clients. This is a quote about negativity. Always with you, it cannot be done. And I think this was a point where Luke Skywalker was saying, I just can't do it. I think this was the part where he said, I can't lift this X-wing, a rocket out of the water in a swamp. I just can't do it. And he says, with you, it cannot be done. And in many ways, he was saying, if you believe you can't do it, then you won't be able to do it. If you believe you can, you can. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right, which is another quote. The idea here is, if you believe you can do things, you will be surprised by the number of things that you can actually do. Related to this quote, and I think in the same scene, was this one. Oops, sorry, we jumped. Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? This is a really important one for us as independent consultants, because many of us are small operations. In fact, most of us are probably 1 or 2 person operations. And we think to ourselves, how can we possibly compete? Remember that you actually compete based on a lot of things. Number one, your flexibility, your overall costs. I'm not saying you need to be have a low billing rate, but I'm saying your costs relative to the big companies is going to be a lot less, because you don't have that overhead. You don't have, that 50 and 60% overhead rate that they have to charge just to keep themselves in business. You have the ability to be flexible by working with one another through subcontracts and pairing up or grouping up as needed, and then separating. And I think that's a flexibility that is an advantage over a lot of the others. I know the complication is that we don't have the name recognition. We're small operations, but once we develop our niche and we are well known within a small group of people through our social networks and our Ikigai, these things become a lot more doable, and they become, quite profitable, and quite we can operationalize around a lot of opportunities. You will find only what you bring in. This is a statement about how your world is a reflection of you. If you have a positive attitude, you will see things in a positive light. It's kind of a very Zen Buddhist kind of perspective. If you release your negativity, you will find peace, which will allow you focus on the force. If you release this idea that I'm in competition with a bunch of other people, that these are my projects, and you're very guarded, that's going to be the way that you see the world. If you are free with the way that you think about your world and the work that you do, and you are open to others, you're going to create more opportunities to create relationships with others, with other consultants, with other clients, and this work will kind of grow and develop in a very natural way. And I know this is all very kind of touchy-feely and a little otherworldly, but I mean, this is the way I've operated, and it's worked for me, and I think it's worked for a lot of people. Anger, fear, aggression, the dark side are the, so this is, are they, I guess this is a way of saying, avoid the dark side, avoid Darth Vader, avoid becoming part of the machine. I guess we have to stay true to our values, and we have our own personal values. We have some great perspective on values, and from the American Evaluation Association. One thing that I think a lot of independent consultants, evaluators do is they kind of bend to the will of their clients. And I think that to me would be the dark side. If a client is saying, I really want to see this out of your evaluation report, and you're providing that back to them, if you become more of a public relations function and less of a independent evaluator, that's the dark side to me. We have to avoid those urges to give in to making the money to do the thing that the client wants, when the reality is we need to have that objective third-party perspective, because that's what we're paid to do. It's really important. And finally, pass on what you have learned. Take this opportunity to be engaged with others. You need to think about how you have the opportunity to teach others within the American Evaluation Association, within other TIGs, with teacher clients. And this is central to social networking karma. The idea of creating relationships with others by teaching them without expecting anything in return means that you will have things come in return to you in ways that you never expected. All right, I have 5.5 takeaways for Star Wars Day. First, stay focused on your niche through your networking karma. That's the way that we create our force, our Star Wars force idea. Small is beautiful. It allows you to be flexible, and it's cost effective. Stick with your strengths. This is really important. This is central to your Ikigai idea. The 4 circles, one of those is do the things that you love and the things that you enjoy, that you're good at, right? Those are 2 of the circles. And so if you stick with your strengths and effectively don't try and work on your weaknesses, understand your weaknesses, try not to dwell too much on them. But if you're sticking with your strengths, you're going to be better at what you do. If you do the things that you enjoy and that you're good at, a lot of the other things are going to fall into place. Don't go to the dark side. We just talked about that. Remember to engage with others, those consultants and clients. That's the way that we create our social networking karma. And finally, probably the most predictable one, may the force be with you. Or today, may the 4th be with you. Finally, here's our upcoming sessions. And I think that's it. I'm going to stop the recording, and then I'd love to hear what people think. Thanks for being very patient with me today.